Oh hey. So I recently watched K-pop Demon Hunters for the first time, and honestly, I gotta be real, I thought it kinda sucked. Just kidding, I freaking loved it.
You have bewitched me, body and soul, and I love you.
Yeah, I am almost concerningly obsessed with this movie. And judging from the amount of attention that it's received online in the past couple of weeks, it seems safe to say I am not the only one. But despite the literal thousands of videos that have already been posted online about K-pop Demon Hunters, you know what I'm not seeing a lot of content about? The art history, baby. Because there is an insane amount of references to Korean art history hidden literally everywhere throughout this movie. Actually, it's kind of insane just how much the art history that's hidden all throughout this film adds to the lore and the symbolism of everything that goes on in it, especially with the demons and their markings. But we'll talk about that later. So let's investigate every time I think this movie took direct inspiration from Korean art throughout history, shall we? So first off, let's talk shamans. So if you don't already know the plot of K-pop Demon Hunters, the whole thing basically revolves around this K-pop girl group called Huntrix that's composed of 3 different members. Rumi, the lead singer, who's known as K-pop royalty because her dead, mysterious mom was also a member of a K-pop group. Mira, the lead dancer, who was implied to have been kicked out of her family for her outspoken and brash nature and kind of rebellious personality. And Zoe, the rapper of the group, who grew up in Burbank, California before moving to Seoul, Korea, where the movie takes place. Okay, so what the heck does a girl band have to do with shamans exactly? In the first few minutes of the movie, we're introduced to the fact that Huntrix aren't just K-pop stars, they're actually demon hunters. This is where we're first introduced to one of the central unspoken themes of the movie, that of traditional Korean shamanism. See, Korean shamans, also called mudan, date back hundreds of years in Korean history, and their role was to lead rituals known as gut, where shamans communicated with gods and spirits through song and dance. Gut were used to heal people and exorcise spirits and demons through an appeal to divine powers, as well as to promote the welfare of all those watching and listening. This idea of using song and dance to defeat evil, cleanse the world, and increase the happiness and well-being of everyone who hears and sees it is pretty much the theme of the entire movie, and the director has stated as such. So that's all cool and dandy, but where the heck is the art history in this movie then? Well, let's go back to the beginning, shall we? Less than 2 minutes into the film, we're taken into the far past, where we see a trio of women who are introduced as the first ever demon hunters. And what immediately stood out to me is that these ladies are definitely dressed in some pretty shaman-esque outfits. See, their outfits and weapons are colorful in a very specific way that actually reminds me of a couple very specific pieces of art. First are these shaman paintings made by the artist Park Sang-kwang. Also, I apologize for all of my pronunciations in this video. I have multiple Korean people in my life who have tried to help me with this. I'm doing my best. Korean's a hard one for me. Now, obviously, I don't know if the creative team on K-pop Demon Hunters actually looked at his art while making this movie, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did, because the vibrancy of the colors, the designs of the outfits, and the flow of the subjects really does bear a strong resemblance to Park's work. Second is this bad boy, a genre painting from around the 18th century called Dancing Together with Two Swords, which shows a traditional Korean sword dance and martial art called gyeomu, which dates back to around 660 AD. Note the hats? It's actually a military hat called a jorip. Super cool. Naturally, there's a ton more that can and should be said about how cool Korean shamanism is, but as we're not even 2 minutes into this movie, and I feel like I've already yapped for a long time, let's take a break from our past heroes to talk a little bit more about our present ones. Or more specifically about their fashion accessories. So if you were paying close attention to the outfits of the members of Huntrix in the first part of the movie, and I'm talking really close attention, you might have noticed these guys. These are called norige. They're little ornate hanbok decorations that are thought to have originated in the Joseon dynasty and are usually composed of intricate knotwork and small charms. Generally speaking, nowadays norige are considered to be both pieces of wearable art as well as fashion accessories. But there's a lot of speculation that they started out as protective emblems used in primitive versions of, say it with me folks, Korean shamanism. But what's really cool about Huntrix's norige isn't just their pieces of wearable art, it's that each specific norige actually says a ton about the girl who's wearing it. For instance, let's take Rumi. Nope. Not sure why I rolled my R there. For instance, let's take Rumi's.
The woman was too stunned to speak.
For instance, let's take Rumi's norige. Rumi's norige is composed of complex black and purple knots, symbolizing her mixed human and demon heritage. When you compare her design with Mira and Zoe's, Rumi's norige also looks very traditional and mature, which is a key trait of Rumi's personality. For the greater part of the movie, she tries really hard to adhere to other people's expectations of her, especially of the generation before her. She also has a muganwa. Oh no, the Korean! Why is Korean so hard? She also has a muganwa flower, which is the national flower of Korea and symbolizes resilience and perseverance, which is why it's often called the eternal blossom that never fades. Now, contrast this with Mira's norige, which is more of a modern, less traditional style with a large heart charm and tiny little charms of Rumi and Zoe. The pink color often represents love and friendship, and the butterfly motif shows an idea of transformation and gentleness. Honestly, this whole norige really calls to mind the idea of found family and a transformation of self, which are two of the central themes in Mira's character in this movie. And also, just look at the little teeny tiny Zoe and Rumi, they're so cute. Speaking of personal transformation, I also think this norige is a really beautiful reminder of Mira's character. Despite the fact that she can come off as blunt and a little bit abrasive, Mira is also deeply caring and loving, especially towards Zoe and Rumi. Maybe because they showed her that it's okay to be herself. Mira is someone who loves and feels things deeply. She just prefers to wear her heart on her norige rather than on her sleeve. Boo, cheesy joke. Finally, there's Zoe's norige. It's a bit shorter than Rumi's or Mira's, with more charms, and the yellow color often represents both joy and a sense of nobility. But what I really love about Zoe's norige are all of those little charms that she's added on. We see stars, her name in beads, and two adorable little bunnies that I'm willing to bet probably represent her band members, like Mira's do. But the biggest charm by far is this guy, a cute little turtle. So in the first few minutes of the movie, we hear Zoe say something that seems to imply she's a little bit obsessed with turtles.
I already picked out a movie for us. It's actually a list of 700 2-second videos I want you to watch all about turtles.
This honestly makes a lot of sense for her character, not just because, yeah, turtles are freaking rad and we should all be a little bit more obsessed with turtles, but also because a big part of her character arc is learning to come out of her shell. It's cheesy, but this is literally a children's movie like What Do You Want From Me? It's great. It's alluded to several times throughout the movie that she tends to be a little bit of a people pleaser, adapting her behavior to match what she thinks that other people around her would prefer rather than showing her true authentic self.
Why are you looking at me?
Eagerness to please. Maybe a little too eager.
What? I'm not like that. You guys would tell me if I was really like that, right?
Throughout the course of the movie, we get to see her actively push back against that and come out of her shell. Hence, the turtle charm. Naturally, with the turtle and rabbit charms together, there's also a speculation about fables like the tortoise and the hare or the hare's liver, a traditional Korean folktale. Either way, the addition of the rabbit charms with the turtle charm show us something really interesting about Zoe's personality and her self-perception. In my mind, I agree with people who've said that it may be that she feels like she's from two different worlds. She's the tortoise and the hare.
You're too much and not enough.
As we see the girls grow together as a group, we get the next song, Golden, that leads right into the next big piece of art history. Hiding in the background right here. Stop. Yeah, See that painting in the back there? It's actually an extremely famous design called Ir or painting of the sun, moon, and the 5 peaks. Also, thank you so much to my aunt Haewon, who is Korean and helped me with the pronunciation in this video. I'm so sorry I failed you, Haewon, but I'm really trying my best here. We start out seeing it behind Rumi alone, and then we see it as the backdrop for the entire group, and then as the main promotional material for the single. That's interesting for a couple of reasons, but perhaps the most interesting is that historically, artwork with this composition, the sun, moon, and the mountains with the river, was used exclusively behind the throne of kings in the Joseon dynasty. So naturally, it's really interesting and cool to see how often Rumi is depicted completely alone against this backdrop. After all, as it states in the movie,
She's pop star royalty.
in this way, and because we see mostly just her with this background, it's not much of a stretch to say that this painting is trying to tell us something about Rumi specifically. But here's where it gets meaningful. Throughout the movie, we see Rumi struggle with her identity and her self-perception. By having Ir feature so heavily in the background of Golden, the song that's essentially supposed to be the group's triumph song, it really feels like Rumi is telling the viewers that this is the strongest, best version of herself. The version of herself she wants other people to see and admire. In this way, the painting seems to represent Rumi's self-made persona, one that's put together, regal, powerful. But here's the thing about the sun, moon, and the 5 peaks. Not only is it a beautiful painting, it also served an important practical role. During the Joseon dynasty, you weren't allowed to gaze directly at the king. So this huge, beautiful painting was put up in the background in the king's throne room to give visitors something to look at, since they couldn't look directly at the king. This is Rumi at her most unbreakable, but also at her most untouchable. She's majestic, but she's also completely alone. This whole song, heck, for the whole movie, practically, up until the last few minutes, it feels like Rumi is going, look at me, look at everything I've accomplished, look at everything that we've done together. Just don't look too closely at me. And if we're saying that this painting serves as a reminder of Rumi's public persona, it makes it even more impactful that it's in the background, not just while she's performing Golden, but also when she runs away because she can't perform it. It's constantly in the background, almost like she can't escape her own self-made persona. And later in the movie, when we see her demon markings publicly revealed during the performance of Takedown, spoiler alert by the way, we see that same painting, but this time it's glitched and distorted, showing the takedown of her own self-made image and her own persona that she's crafted for herself. Throughout the sequence, the background gets more and more distorted until the moment that we see her completely lose all hope, succumbing to her fears. We see a tiny glimpse of the vibrant green, yellow, and blue of that original piece, and then it's gone. In her distress, it is completely destroyed, just like the image that she had so carefully crafted of herself. The idea of feeling like you have to live up to someone else's expectations of you is a huge theme throughout this movie, and it's also super relatable. And in that way, I think that the Ir is one of the most beautiful symbols that they could have used to convey that message. Speaking of Rumi's identity as a half-demon, it's time for the part of the video that everybody's been waiting for. The demons. So the first thing that you probably noticed about the demons in K-pop Demon Hunter is, well, they look pretty demonic. But also, we're introduced pretty early on in the movie to the idea that the demons are easily identified by the patterns that appear on their skin. Wait, why didn't I ever take my jacket off? Another thing that we see pretty early on in the movie is that Rumi also has these demonic patterns. So here's my question. We know that the team behind K-pop Demon Hunters drew heavily on Korean art, mythology, and history for pretty much everything in this movie. Every design choice that they made was extremely purposeful and very well thought out. So what's up with the demon patterns? Where's that coming from? Well, I got some ideas. The official creators haven't really said much about the demon markings and why they chose to portray them in that particular visual style, but there are some really interesting parallels that we see in Korean art from around 45 years ago that could lend us a lot more insight into the inspiration for those markings and the greater meaning behind them. So it's thought that the demons in this movie are based off of dokebi, Korean goblins that are often described as looking very similar to or able to disguise themselves as humans, which aligns pretty well with what we see that the demons in this movie can do. But here's the thing, from what I could find of old traditional art of dokebi, which honestly is kind of hard to find a lot of, I couldn't find any that had these really cool, distinctive patterns on them like they do in the movie. That is, until I found this. This is a woodblock print of dokebi from the Korean artist Oh Yoon, which made art that was primarily influenced by shamanism and gut. That's right, the same gut we talked about like 5 minutes ago. Oh my gosh, that's so much longer than 5 minutes ago. But one of the other big things that Oh Yoon was inspired by was the idea of han. Han is an emotion that doesn't have a direct translation, but has been described as a sense of guilt, grief, resentment, and a loss of identity.
I know what it feels like to have them.
Demons don't feel anything.
That's all demons do. Feel our shame, our misery. It's how Gima controls us.
The Korean theologian Seo Nam-dong describes Han as a feeling of unresolved resentment against injustices suffered, a sense of helplessness because of the overwhelming odds against one, a feeling of acute pain in one's guts and bowels, making the whole body writhe and squirm, and an obstinate urge to take revenge and to right the wrong. All these combined. Although its use has dwindled a bit in Korea itself, the idea of Han, a cultural sense of guilt, resentment, and a loss of identity is still extremely relevant, especially in Korean American communities. During the 80s, in a time where many Korean artists were actively working to reclaim a sense of the Korean identity, Oh Yoon specifically worked to make the idea of Han visible through his prints. And in many of his works that involve demons or those possessed by demons, we see these specific, distinctive markings. And if we think about these markings being a visual representation of Han, of resentment, guilt, anger, and regret, especially in the context of identity, it fits in perfectly with the narrative of K-pop demon hunters. So now that we've referenced Jinu's tragic backstory, perhaps it's time to reference his happy little pals. Let's talk about these guys. This is by far the most talked about piece of art history in K-pop demon hunters, but in case you haven't heard about it already, or if you're like a lot of people in my comments and you have no idea what this movie is and you're kind of just along for the ride, totally okay. Also, thank you for watching. Here's a super quick version. Throughout the movie, we see that Jinu, the mastermind behind the Saja Boys, which is the demon boy band, has two animal companions, a tiger and a magpie. Throughout the movie, we see them act as messengers and also absolute pals. Just sweet little guys. But what you might not know is that these guys are actually a reference to a famous Korean genre of minhwa, or genre paintings, called hojakdo, which is a word that literally translates to tiger-magpie paintings. Oftentimes, the magpie in these paintings is thought of as a messenger and a bringer of good fortune, and the tiger was often thought to ward off evil spirits, acting as a sort of protector. Knowing that, I think it's really sweet that they follow him around. Like, I wonder if they sort of recognize that there's still good in him somehow? It's also really interesting to me that these guys tend to follow around Jinu specifically because hojakdo paintings were often a critique of the social hierarchy between the rich and the poor, especially during the Joseon dynasty when they were most popular. In that way, it definitely feels like there's something interesting going on here because Jinu was extremely poor and then abandoned his family to escape that poverty and live in the palace as a court musician. He's poor, she's royalty. It's interesting, you know? I can't claim to know everything that they're talking about here or referencing, but I definitely feel like there's some good stuff there. Like I said, I know a lot of people have already covered this, so I don't really want to overdo this one. One last funny thing though, I feel like it's interesting to keep in mind that in these paintings, the tigers often are meant to represent the upper class, and so they're often painted as foolish and silly. And magpies represented the common people, and were painted as clever and cunning. Definitely adds an extra layer to this lovely little tidbit.
Why does the bird wear a tiny hat?
I made it for the tiger, but the bird keeps taking it.
Now, last of all, let's talk about color theory, and you'll have to forgive me here because we're going off script a little bit. So the traditional Korean color palette is called obongse, and it's also associated with
Say the line, Bart!
Korean shamanism. And in obongse, it has like 5 main colors that they're usually talking about. So you have blue, red, yellow, white, and black. Blue represents the east, the sky, and is associated with inspiration, creativity, and generosity. While red represents the south, fire, and symbolizes passion, energy, and good luck. Yellow represents the center, the earth, and is associated with the middle, stability, and the sun, as well as humanity. White represents the west, metal, and symbolizes purity, honesty, and innocence. While black represents the north, water, and symbolizes wisdom, knowledge, and death. We see this reflected in a ton of different costumes and clothing at different times, and honestly, if I were to try and go through and name all of the different ways that it's reflected in the clothing in this film, it would be another entire video, and it'd be like 3 hours long. But I do think it's super interesting that in the beginning of the movie we see, and several times throughout the movie, we see that the 3 main girls are dressed in the 3 traditional colors of Korean shamanism. I think it's just a fun little nod to the 3 most traditional colors, red, yellow, and blue. The other thing that I think is extremely interesting in this movie is the pearls. So if you noticed in the last scene of this movie, the girls, after they have their like magical transformation and they come together in like a beautiful like friendship is magic moment, if you know what I'm saying. Their outfits turn from like the black and white that they had been wearing throughout the movie to like a solid white with accents of like this mother of pearl. But what's super interesting is that the mother of pearl, well, number one, we've already seen it earlier in the movie. We see it with the 3 original hunters, which is a fun detail. But number 2, it's actually a pretty big part of traditional Korean art. Mother of pearl inlay was often used in something called najeon, which are basically like lacquered boxes, furniture, things like that, that are inlaid with these extremely intricate designs made with mother of pearl, which, ding ding ding, mother of pearl. And what I think is even more interesting is that the combination of all of the colors, the mother of pearl, all of these different things represent harmony. That's what these 5 colors of the traditional Korean color system coming together all represents. And honestly, I just think it's lovely the way that they chose to represent that. I think that that's awesome. If you're wondering why this little video is kind of a rant, and honestly, a little disjointed, it is currently 2:36 in the morning. So, I apologize for that. But there's a million more things that I could say about the clothing in this movie. Like I already said, I think it's really fun that we get to see the demon boy band go from like rainbow to pink specifically, and then to a dark gray, and then to a black. I think that's a really interesting detail. It's just a really fun way to depict like the language of color. There's a million more things we could talk about color theory, but the really cool thing to recognize is that it just adds so much to the film in terms of like visual meaning. It's so fun. Okay, so why the heck am I yapping about this? This is an art history channel. Why am I talking about a children's movie that came out like over a month ago? Why would I take over 100 hours of my life researching the art history connections of a random animated Netflix original film? Well, first off, because the film is baller. It's a great film, it has gorgeous design choices, it's just masterfully done. But more importantly, I think it's that this movie beautifully illustrates something that we should all try and remember. All art, including art like movies, is a conversation between the present and the past. Especially since the introduction of AI, it seems like everyone's saying that society has kind of run out of original ideas. But there's not really any such thing as a truly original idea. Or at least Not in my opinion. Ideas themselves are a byproduct of the constant consumption of other ideas, of everything that we hear and see around us every single day. Art, media, communication in general, it's all a dialogue between the past and the present. That's one of the things that makes this movie so fantastic, is that it very intentionally and masterfully draws on that. I freaking loved this movie, and if you somehow made it to the end of this video and you still haven't seen it, go watch it. You won't regret it. Just go. Break into a stranger's house. Get their Netflix account. You can do it. And if you've already watched it, what did you think? What did I miss? What do you wish I had talked more about? What do you wish I had talked less about? Did you like this video? Do you want more videos like this? Or did you just absolutely hate this video? And if you did hate this video, why'd you watch like 40 minutes of it, you masochist? Also, this video is officially sponsored by my Patreon. If you'd like to join me in my mission to make art history fun for everybody online and gaslight the world into learning more about art history, you can join us down below. We have live streams every other Wednesday. I hope you have an amazing day. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I don't really have a way to end it, so bye!